Have you ever heard of a soldier so impossible that an entire German army refused to believe what they were seeing? A 19-year-old kid who weighed barely 110 pounds standing on top of a burning tank destroyer, holding off 250 elite mountain troops and 6 tanks for over an hour. Alone. This isn't fiction. This isn't Hollywood. This is the true story of Audie Murphy and what happened on a frozen field in France on January 26, 1945, is so unbelievable that even the Germans who witnessed it never spoke about it. Not once. Not in diaries, not in reports, not in interviews decades later. Just silence. Today, we're going deep into one of the most incredible displays of courage in military history. A moment when one man rewrote the rules of warfare and shocked an army into retreat. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why his actions still haunt the battlefield where they happened. This is the Great War Chronicles. Let's begin. Most people who achieve extraordinary things come from extraordinary backgrounds. Audie Murphy did not. Born on June 20, 1925, in Hunt County, Texas, Murphy grew up in poverty so crushing it's hard to imagine today. He was the 6th of 12 children in a sharecropper family that had nothing. Not enough food, not enough shelter, not enough hope. When Audie was 12, his father abandoned them. Just walked away. Left a boy to become a man overnight. When he was 16, his mother died. Endocarditis and pneumonia took her, and with her went any semblance of childhood Audie had left. At 16 years old, he became the primary provider for his younger siblings. Here's what shaped Audie Murphy into what he would become. He learned to hunt, not for sport, for survival. If I don't hit what I shoot at, my family doesn't eat tonight. That's what he told his neighbor. Every bullet cost money they didn't have. Every miss meant his brothers and sisters went to bed hungry. So he didn't miss. He couldn't afford to. The boy could drop a running rabbit at 50 yards with a rifle most people couldn't hit a barn with. Under that kind of pressure, where failure meant starvation, Murphy developed a shooter's eye that would later save his life and the lives of every man under his command. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, Murphy saw his chance. The military meant steady pay, 3 meals a day, money to send home, but even joining the fight proved nearly impossible for the undersized teenager. Standing just 5'5" and weighing 110 pounds, Murphy was rejected by the Marines. Too small. Rejected by the Navy, too small. The paratroopers wouldn't take him. Finally, the regular Army infantry accepted him on June 30, 1942, after his sister provided a falsified document claiming he was 18. He wasn't. He was 17. Private First Class David McClure went through basic training with Murphy. Years later, he remembered, we all thought he was a mascot at first. This kid who looked about 14 and weighed nothing. The drill sergeants rode him mercilessly, called him baby. But there was something about his eyes. When he was on the rifle range, those baby blue eyes went cold as winter. He never missed, not once. Murphy's transformation from farm boy to killing machine began in Sicily, July 1943. Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division landed as part of Patton's 7th Army. In the mountains of Sicily, Murphy discovered something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He was exceptionally good at killing. His rural upbringing had taught him to move silently, to use terrain, to shoot quickly and accurately. When his unit was pinned down by machine gun fire near Palermo, Private Murphy worked his way around the enemy position, eliminated the crew with grenades, and turned their weapon on the retreating forces. His captain wrote, "This soldier displays a natural aptitude for combat that is extraordinary in one so young and inexperienced." Italy turned Murphy from a good soldier into something else entirely. At the Volturno River crossing in October 1943, Murphy held off a German counterattack, single-handedly, when his squad was decimated. Using a borrowed sniper rifle, he killed 5 German soldiers at ranges exceeding 300 yards. Staff Sergeant William Paulson described what made Murphy different. Murph didn't fight angry. That's what was terrifying about him. He fought cold, calculated, like he was doing arithmetic. See a German, eliminate the German, move to the next German. No emotion, no hesitation, just deadly efficiency. At Anzio, that blood-soaked beachhead, Murphy earned his first Silver Star for destroying a German tank with a bazooka at point-blank range. By the invasion of southern France in August 1944, Murphy had survived Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, and Rome. He had been wounded twice, decorated multiple times, and developed a reputation among both Americans and Germans as someone to be feared. When his lieutenant was killed in an ambush near Montélimar, Sergeant Murphy took command. With 18 men against a German company of over 100, he held a critical crossroads for 2 hours, personally accounting for 15 enemy dead. On October 14, 1944, he received a battlefield commission to second lieutenant. By January 1945, Murphy was no longer the baby-faced recruit. Combat had aged him beyond his 19 years. He had seen most of his original companions killed or wounded. He had personally killed over 100 enemy soldiers. And now Company B was approaching the Colmar Pocket. The Colmar Pocket was hell frozen over. An 850-square-mile German bridgehead west of the Rhine. The last piece of French soil the Wehrmacht controlled. Hitler had ordered it held at all costs, and the Germans had reinforced it with elite mountain troops, specially trained for winter combat in Norway. For Company B, the situation was desperate. In 5 days of fighting, they had lost 102 men wounded, and all officers except Murphy killed or evacuated. From a full-strength company of 187 men, they were down to 40 exhausted, freezing, shell-shocked men. Murphy himself was fighting with a leg wound from shrapnel received 2 days earlier. He told no one. Private Anthony Abramsky described their condition. "We were finished, done. Most of us hadn't slept in 3 days. We'd been living on cold K rations when we could eat at all. Half the guys had frostbite. Our machine guns were freezing up. We tried all night to dig foxholes, but the ground was like iron. When dawn came and we saw our positions strung out along the edge of the woods with open fields in front of us, we knew we were sitting ducks." January 26, 1945. The temperature hovered around freezing. Snow lay 3 feet deep in places. Company B held positions along the edge of the Bois de Riedveer forest, looking out across nearly a mile of open ground toward the German-held village of Holzwehr. Murphy had positioned his men as best he could. 2 tank destroyers provided his only anti-tank capability. His infantry was spread thin. He established his command post in a drainage ditch with a good view of approaching ground and field telephone lines to supporting artillery. At 1,300 hours, the German artillery barrage began. Tree bursts showered Company B's positions with deadly fragments for 30 minutes. At 1,400 hours, the attack came. Private First Class Donald Ekman was the first to spot them. You could see the pennants on the antennas of the German tanks. 6 of them spread out in attack formation. And behind them, Jesus Christ, there must have been 250 infantry, all in white snow camouflage, moving across that field like ghosts. 250 elite German mountain infantry. 6 tanks against 40 exhausted Americans. By every principle of military science, the American position should have been overrun in minutes. Murphy called for artillery support, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. The Germans were too spread out, too numerous, moving too fast. At 600 yards, the tank destroyers opened fire. They missed. Return fire was immediate and devastating. An 88mm shell struck the rear tank destroyer squarely in the turret. It burst into flames, the crew scrambling out and running for the woods. The forward tank destroyer, attempting to maneuver, slid into a drainage ditch. Its crew abandoned it and retreated. At 1,420 hours, with both tank destroyers out of action and German infantry closing to within 200 yards, Murphy made a decision that defied all logic. He ordered his men to fall back to the woods. But he didn't retreat. Instead, Murphy ran through artillery fire to the burning tank destroyer. The vehicle was fully engulfed in flames. Black smoke poured from the hull. Heat radiated from 30 feet away. At any moment, the remaining ammunition could explode, turning the vehicle into a massive bomb. Murphy climbed onto the tank destroyer and manned its 50-caliber machine gun. Private First Class Anthony Abramsky watched from the woodline. "I saw Lieutenant Murphy climb on top of the burning tank destroyer while bursts of machine gun fire were heard. Pistol fire from the advancing infantry battered against the hull. It was the greatest display of guts and courage I have ever seen. For the next hour, Audie Murphy became something inhuman. The .50 caliber Browning fired 550 rounds per minute. In Murphy's hands, it became an instrument of precise destruction. He maintained telephone contact with artillery, calling in fire missions dangerously, close to his own position. The combination of his machine gun fire and artillery created a wall of steel the Germans could not penetrate. Sergeant Elmer Brolly observed from the woods. The German infantrymen got within 10 yards of Lieutenant Murphy, who killed them in the draws, in the meadows, in the woods, wherever he saw them. Think about what was happening. Murphy was standing on a burning bomb, completely exposed, being shot at from 3 directions by 250 elite soldiers and 6 tanks, for an hour. Technical Sergeant Maurice Britt, observing through binoculars, later testified, Murphy's fire was incredibly effective. He wasn't just spraying bullets. Every burst was aimed. He was picking off German infantry like he was at a shooting gallery. The German tanks couldn't advance without infantry support. Infantry Murphy was systematically destroying. Their entire combined arms assault, the pinnacle of German tactical doctrine, was being stopped cold by one American soldier. At 1,500 hours, after 40 minutes of continuous firing, Murphy's ammunition began to run low. The barrel of his machine gun glowed red from heat. The tank destroyer beneath him was settling into the ground as its tracks melted. German infantry had worked to within 10 yards. Private Charles Owen recalled, "We could hear the lieutenant's .50 starting to slow down. He was running out of ammo. Some of the Germans must have figured it out because they started rushing forward. Murphy grabbed his carbine and started picking them off with that." At 1,510 hours, with ammunition nearly exhausted and Germans closing to within 10 yards, Murphy made the most desperate call of the battle. He ordered artillery to fire directly on his position. The forward observer initially refused. It would mean certain death. But Murphy insisted. "I'm giving you a direct order. Fire on my position now." The first shells landed within 50 yards of the burning tank destroyer. Explosions threw frozen earth and shrapnel in all directions. German infantry caught in the open were torn apart. Murphy, exposed on top of the vehicle, was also in the impact zone. Shrapnel tore through his leg. His second wound of the day. He continued firing. The combination of Murphy's direct fire and the artillery barrage broke the German attack. The surviving infantry, perhaps 100 men, began falling back. The tanks, without infantry support, reversed course and withdrew. At 1,520 hours, after an hour of continuous combat, Murphy climbed down from the burning tank destroyer. His uniform was scorched. Blood ran down his leg. Behind him, the tank destroyer exploded 10 minutes later. The battlefield was devastating. German bodies lay scattered across the snow. Military historians estimate 50 dead with many more wounded. Murphy walked back to the wood line where his men waited. According to Private Abramsky, he was calm, scary calm. He asked if we had any casualties from the artillery, made sure everyone was okay, then sat down and lit a cigarette like nothing had happened. His hands weren't even shaking. Here's what makes this story even more haunting. Despite extensive research in German military archives, no German soldier who was there ever spoke about it. Not one first-hand account, not one diary entry. Not one interview, just silence. The German units involved have been identified. The 2nd Mountain Division, elite formations, veterans with extensive combat experience. They had fought in Norway, Finland, the Eastern Front. They had never retreated, until that day. The 2nd Mountain Division's war diary for January 26 notes only, attack on American positions near Holtzwihr repulsed with heavy casualties. Enemy resistance heavier than expected. That sterile entry hides what must have been happening in the German ranks. Elite troops who had never encountered anything like this. A single soldier who seemed immune to fear, fatigue, and the basic human instinct for self-preservation. That night, under cover of darkness, they withdrew from the sector entirely. Without orders. Elite mountain troops who had never retreated in 4 years of war withdrew because one American soldier had broken something in them. Not just their attack, their will. The successful defense enabled the 3rd Infantry Division to maintain its hold on critical terrain. Holtzwihr itself fell the following day. Within weeks, the entire Colmar Pocket had been eliminated, removing 50,000 German troops from the war. On June 2, 1945, Lieutenant General Alexander Patch presented Audie Murphy with the Medal of Honor. The citation struggled to capture what had happened. He was alone, exposed to German fire from 3 sides, but his deadly fire killed dozens of Germans and caused their infantry attack to waver. For an hour, the Germans tried every available weapon to eliminate 2nd Lieutenant Murphy, but he continued to hold his position. Murphy was characteristically direct when asked why he climbed onto that burning tank destroyer. "They were killing my friends. It was not a heroic act. I figured if one man could do the job, why risk the lives of others?" But the war followed Murphy home. What was then called battle fatigue, now recognized as PTSD, tormented him for the rest of his life. Chronic insomnia, recurring nightmares. He slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow. Eventually, he moved to sleeping in his garage with the lights on, unable to tolerate darkness that reminded him of night combat. "I remember the experiences as if I do a nightmare," Murphy wrote. "A demon seemed to have entered my body." His first marriage lasted only 16 months, destroyed by his PTSD. But Murphy turned his pain into purpose. He became one of the first public advocates for veterans suffering from combat-related psychological injuries. In 1966, he wrote, "I can't remember when I didn't have nightmares. They became part of my life, like breathing. But I was lucky. I could afford doctors, medication, therapy. What about the veteran who can't? What about the thousands coming back from Vietnam with the same problems?" His advocacy led to legislation creating the Audie L. Murphy Memorial VA Hospital in San Antonio in 1973, 2 years after his death in a plane crash at age 45. Audie Murphy's military record remains unmatched. He received every combat decoration for valor the United States Army could award. 33 decorations total, including the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, 3 Purple Hearts, plus 5 decorations from France and Belgium. But his true legacy lies beyond medals. The Murphy Memorial VA Hospital specializes in treating PTSD. His autobiography, To Hell and Back, has helped thousands of veterans realize they're not alone. The U.S. Army Infantry School uses his action at Holtzwihr as a case study in defensive operations and leadership under fire. Murphy's widow, Pamela, who remained with him until his death, provided perhaps the most honest assessment. Audie carried invisible wounds that never healed. He'd wake up screaming, reliving battles from 20 years earlier. But he never stopped trying to help other veterans. The war never ended for Audie, but he turned his pain into purpose. Today, the field outside Holtzwihr is peaceful farmland. The scars of battle have healed, shell craters filled in, blood washed away by decades of rain. But on January 26th each year, a small ceremony is held at the memorial marking Murphy's stand. French citizens, American veterans, and occasionally elderly Germans gather to remember. Murphy's story reminds us that heroism isn't about being fearless. Murphy was terrified by his own admission. It's about acting despite that fear when others depend on you. It's about making a stand when retreat would be easier. In the end, that's why one American soldier held off 250 Germans for over an hour. The Germans encountered something military science couldn't explain, tactical doctrine couldn't counter, overwhelming force couldn't overcome. The unconquerable human spirit embodied in a 110-pound Texan who would rather die than let his friends be killed. The boy who hunted rabbits to feed his family became the man who stopped an army to save his friends. And that transformation from the ordinary to the extraordinary remains one of the most shocking truths in the history of warfare. This has been the Great War Chronicles. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and join us as we uncover the forgotten heroes and untold stories that shaped our world. Your next great story is just one video away. I'll see you in the next one.